they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. However, the losses come with you all season long. Hello, everyone. Welcome inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Glad to have you with us as we recap the second loss of the season for the Denver Broncos. They go to Vegas, take on a team that hadn't won a game all year, and hand Josh McDaniels his first win of the season and basically keep him from getting fired. I saw last night, B-Marsh, somebody was tweeting that the Broncos are just playing the long game here, keeping McDaniels on the Raiders roster, so to speak, preventing him from getting fired so that when they come to town later in the season and pay a visit to Mile High, they can finally get back at him. But B-Marsh, that was not a game that the Broncos offense or defense is going to look back at and love from what they put on tape yesterday. Let's jump right into it with What's on Marshall's Mind. What's on Marshall's Mind brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos bourbon blends. B-Marsh, what's on your mind today after that loss?
Man, I mean, just looking at the offense and looking at the whole totality of the season so far, right? The last, the first four games, it just reminds me of the post-Payton era. The offense is, the game planning looks basic. Everything looks simple. And I'm not saying it has to be overly complex or overly complicated because at the end of the day, you are who you are, right? You have to establish an identity and stick with that. But at the same time, it just looks so bland. It looks like I've seen the last few years, and with Daniel Hackett and Russell Wilson coming in and all these weapons, you would think that, okay, it's supposed to be some, it's going to be different on that side of the ball, but it hasn't been at all. And it's boring to watch, I'll say. Yeah. And it's just, it's just kind of basic. It's not really championship football, We're past the winning football. What about we're trying to get to championship football, and how the offense is playing is not getting it done.
And B. Marsh, I don't even know that it needs to be Chiefs level creativity, right? But it needs to be consistent. It needs to be something that you can hang your hat on. I don't know that this offense even has an identity right now because they don't seem to do anything well. And you look at the first half yesterday, I thought Russell Wilson played really well. He was 11 for 12 in the first half, had 2 touchdowns, and then they come out and they start pounding the ball on the ground. And I'm like, what are we doing here? They come out of the second half, they've got their first 4 drives. They go 5 plays for 12 yards, 3 plays for -4 yards, 3 plays for -1 yards, and 3 plays for 1 yard. I'm like, what? You're right. Didn't we hire Nathaniel Hackett because he was an offensive-minded guy who was going to get this offense going? Forget about the creativity. Can we just get some consistency and get some sustained drives?
Yeah, man. And honestly, you got to know who you are, okay? The Achilles heel of the offense is the offensive line, okay? Yes. The Raiders have a good front. Now, the Achilles heel of the Raiders, and has been for years, is the secondary. Right? Just like you said, he came out, he was 11 to 12, 2 touchdowns. They were throwing the ball well. Then they decided to try to run it. And I get it. You got to get your bell cow backs involved. But at the same time, you got to go with what works. You know what I'm saying? Our O-line isn't the greatest. And the Raiders have a good front, man. They got good linebackers, good D-line. You know what I'm saying? Max Crosby on the edge. They have, Chandler Jones. So, play action. They could, screen those guys. They have good pass rushers. Continue to throw the ball. I'm not saying that you have to abandon the run, which that makes no sense. But at the same time, you got to go with what works. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
I think the offensive line has kind of slid under the radar so far through these first 4 games until yesterday, when it became apparent that the Broncos couldn't run the ball and they really couldn't protect Russell Wilson either. It feels like the offensive line has been less than average, been subpar through the first 4 games, but almost like nobody noticed it because, the Broncos ended up winning. They beat the Texans and they beat the 49ers. And so, those things that aren't so great tend to get swept under the rug when you win. And then yesterday, I thought the offensive line was really, really poor, not only in pass protection, but Brandon, they couldn't run the football. I mean, you look at it, Mike Boone had a couple big runs. I think he had a 13-yarder and a 7-yarder. He ran the ball for 6.7 yards per carry, but that's deceptive because he only ran the ball 3 times. But overall, as an offense, the Broncos ran the ball 20 times for 85 yards. I mean, everybody's going to talk about the Melvin Gordon fumble, and no doubt, and we're going to get into that. but they can't run the ball consistently right now, and that is a problem.
No, it's definitely a problem. But also, I think why they've flown under the radar is because you have a $250 million quarterback,
Yeah.
right? So all the attention is going to Russell. You know, everybody's mind says, okay, we got Russell, Russell, Russell. You know, we're gonna win with Russell. We paid him this, we traded for this. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's another reason why the offensive line play has flown under the radar because we're also focused on Russell Wilson. But he has to be protected. He needs time,
Yes.
right? He needs time, man. He needs a solid O line. That you can't have a good offense without a good O line. Okay, the receivers won't get the ball. The running backs can't get yardage. The quarterback won't have time. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to the trenches. And they say it: you win the game in the trenches. Okay, so the O line play has to get better, has to improve. Or else, what good is a $250 million quarterback?
Right, right. I mean, you're basically paying him money so he can get back there. The play that stands out to me was the Andrew Beck play where he's supposed to chip, I think, Max Crosby, and doesn't do a good job of that. And then I think the play was a dump down to Beck, or that was at least an option there, but they didn't even have time for the play to develop because Crosby was just engulfing Russell Wilson right off the bat. And it was just like, man, and that goes back to everything, right? Like, that's play design. That's not knowing your scheme. And yes, not having Quinn Miners and not having Billy Turner really hurts this offensive line, but that's not an excuse. Cam Fleming and Graham Glasgow have to be better. And I think Garrett Bowles has not taken a step forward. I don't know that he's necessarily taken a step back, but he hasn't gotten any better from what we saw last year. And so I think that this offensive line is going to be a real interesting spot to watch over the next couple of games and see kind of how that develops. Obviously, the other big thing coming out from yesterday was the Melvin Gordon fumble. And, man, that's a bad play all around, right? Melvin has it fumbled. Raiders pick it up. They recover. Completely switches the momentum. And, Brandon, I can't help but wonder where Melvin Gordon is right now. He walks off the podium post-game as he's getting emotional. There was a scene in the Broncos locker room where Russell Wilson is standing there with his arms on Melvin Gordon's shoulders, and they had a conversation for probably 4 to 5 minutes. And from what I gathered, I was trying to kind of keep my distance. Russell was doing most of the talking. Melvin was fighting back some tears, and you just can't help but wonder where he is mentally heading into a Thursday night game where he's going to have to now be your number one back, because it looks like Javonte Williams, who's getting an MRI on his knee, is at least going to miss Thursday's game, if not a whole lot more, with what the Broncos think could be a very serious knee injury.
Now, look, Mike, and I want to let everybody know, man, Melvin cares. And I think you can see through his emotion. They asked him a question on the podium. I'm sure he was fighting back tears. Was that the best way to handle it? Probably not. But at the same time, the guy is passionate. He's emotional. I mean, he's had 4 fumbles in 4 games. His ball security, to be honest, throughout his whole career, his ball security hasn't been the greatest. That's never necessarily been his strong suit. Is he a home run hitter? Yes. Is he an athletic back? Can he catch out the backfield? Can he hit the long rope? Yes, he can hit the home run. He can do all of that. But the problem is it all gets overshadowed by his ball security issues. And it's tough on him, man. I mean, the guy returned it. He fumbled and they returned it, 70 or 60, 70 yards for a touchdown, man. That killed the Broncos right there. It killed the team. And so, I mean, just from the outside looking in, and, I know Melvin, but briefly kind of, just so in passing, I know he cares. He cares. And I want Broncos country to know that he's out there giving it his all. He's trying. It's just not getting it done, right? So it's his job, and it's tough to say his job is on the, because it's really not. Without Javonte Williams, they need Melvin Gordon. Okay, so I'm not sure what he can do in practice or what he can start doing. Maybe he got to go old school and start carrying the football around all day, every day. Have players try to punch it out. That's what they used to do. They used to make football players just carry it. The running backs carry the ball around all day. I don't care where you're at. Hold the ball. I think that's something that maybe he needs to go ahead and try. It could potentially help.
And B. Marsh, I'll be honest, I'm not even mad at him for walking off the podium, right? Like, because I think that was legit. And I think it was the emotion of everything. I mean, you saw it when he walked off the field after that fumble. This is a guy who's not only had 4 fumbles in 4 games, but over the last like 11 or 12 games, he's had 3 fumbles returned for touchdowns, which is crazy when you think about it. So, I mean, these fumbles are legit costing his team opportunities to win games. And the only reason his job is not on the line is because the Broncos don't have another option. I mean, Mike Boone is a serviceable back, but he cannot be your primary ball carrier. So the Broncos literally do not have another option, especially if Javonte Williams is out. And so that's the only reason why Melvin is sitting here. You don't find primary ball carriers off the street heading into week 5.
You don't. You don't. It's not like you can just go pick one up, you know what I'm saying? Just chilling. No, Melvin Gordon is he's a really good back. I think he's, I'm gonna give him, at least top 20 in the NFL, at least top 20, And so that's why I'm okay, cool. I'm rooting for Melvin. And I know everybody is, Broncos country is I'm sure they're frustrated with him, but it's just unfortunate. 3 of them returned for touchdowns in the last 11 games. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's tough. And, honestly, any other team that was deeper in backs, man, maybe he would have been riding the pine. He would have sat the bench until, they needed him or they decided to get rid of him. But I'm hoping that he redeems himself, and he just has to do something, something to fix it. Like I said, and people probably think, oh, you're joking about carrying the football around. No, I'm not. No. I'm not. People, running backs used to hold the football all day long. Tiki Barber used to have fumbling issues.
Yes,
he started holding the ball up.
He
started holding the ball up here. I don't know what he did to get it together, but he got it together. Whatever that is, Melvin needs to explore that.
Yeah,
maybe he needs to call Tiki.
He needs to do that, and he needs to do it quickly. I love that idea. Call Tiki. Hey, man, what did you do? You know what I mean? Because he's going to be their number 1 back entering Thursday's game. And it's out there. And I heard your former teammate Derek Wolfe say it last night on the postgame show that I was watching. He was like, look, we knew when we played Melvin when he was with the Chargers that he had fumbling issues. That was something that we talked about. Everybody in the league knows that Melvin Gordon has fumble issues, and the Indianapolis Colts are going to come in there trying to strip that ball. I'm with you. I don't think this is an issue of Melvin not caring. I think this is something that he has got to get figured out and get it figured out in a hurry. And I don't think that I don't think it helped that the fumble came on his first carry of the game yesterday, after he was already on the sideline for a really long time, after they were already favoring Javonte Williams. So I think he needs to call Tiki Barber. I think he needs to figure out what's going on up here, because I think there's a lot of it up here right now, and I think he needs to get that taken care of before Thursday. And if he doesn't, I think that the Broncos are going to have to do something. They're just going to have to if this continues.
I mean, that type of stuff creates real PTSD. You know what I'm saying? Every time you get the ball, and if you're thinking, oh, don't fumble, that's a terrible mindset. Okay. Or maybe he needs to think about that initially. I'm not sure what it is, but he can't have an insecurity so high that it affects his play, right? We need him to be able to play free and play fast, but at the same time, he is jeopardizing the team. Okay. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that him on the field and his fumbling issue is hurting the team. Okay. He needs to address that. And like we talked about, maybe he needs to call Tiki or some of the great running backs in history, call them, figure out like, yo, what did you do? How did you, players do that all the time. I talked to Ray Lewis at one point, I'm like, yo, how did just getting some advice, man. Whatever it is he needs to do.
Yeah, Melvin needs to get that figured out before Thursday when the Colts come to town and the Broncos try to avoid a second straight loss. So when we come back here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, is the Broncos locker room starting to fracture a little bit? I'll tell you what else we learned by being in the locker room after the game yesterday and what gave me a little bit of cause for concern and had me thinking, this might not be good. That and more next on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Back inside upon further review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. B. Marsh, it was really interesting being in the Broncos locker room after the game yesterday because, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, everybody wanted to know what happened. How did you guys allow Josh Jacobs to run for a career-high 144 yards? And you know what's crazy is this Broncos defense came in, they were allowing 81 yards per game on the ground. Now, they hadn't seen an offense like the Las Vegas Raiders, no doubt about it, but they were allowing the other teams to go for 81 yards, and then they allowed Josh Jacobs to go for 144. What did you see yesterday at the run defense? Because it was terrible on every level, in my opinion.
Well, look, let me say this, because they played a team last week in the 49ers, okay, that, first of all, I was more scared about their run game because with Deebo Samuel, Jeff Wilson, and their scheme and their offensive line, I would have thought that, the games would have been reversed. And they shut the Niners down. They did well against, when it came to the run against the 49ers. When it came to the Raiders, it all fell apart. I have no idea what was – so when I was at the game, it was missed tackles, okay? Yeah. It was some gap integrity. I think it was, at the end of the day, we just got beat in the trenches, man. And it's tough to even say that because I like our front. I like our front seven. I think we have a good defense overall, but, I don't know what was going on. And sometimes there's games like that, but the missed tackles, not getting off blocks, certain gap integrity, man, it was just not good. And they allowed the Raiders to run for over 200 yards, man. It's tough to win a game like that when the other team can control the clock like that and control the game on the ground.
Now, you've been in locker rooms after games like that. I thought it was interesting, some of the things that we heard both on camera and off camera. Draymond Jones said on camera, I understand everybody's going to look at the D-line. Collectively, we just have to do better as a defense. The ball hit the A gap, the B gap, the C gap, the D gap, the E gap, whatever gap they hit, we got to make sure we blow up no matter what. And then there were some other things, and I won't name names because it was off camera, but Mike Purcell, who did say this on camera, he was like, it's unacceptable. Period. End of statement. It's unacceptable from start to finish. And then there were some other guys on the defense who were like, hey, make sure you go back and watch the tape. Wow. Hey, yeah. I mean, and again, that was off camera. I'm not gonna name names, but it was clear that there were some issues with everybody thinks that it was one thing, but it might have actually been another thing. Make sure you guys go back and watch the tape and actually see what happened.
Look, pointing the fingers, all right, creating a divide amongst the team is not going to get it done, right? You can't win the championship, or you can't go or reach your potential the way that you would like to reach it, or the way that you would hope to reach it by pointing the finger and being divisive and creating a divide in the locker room, man, on the team. So it sounds like they're trying to blame the linebackers or the safeties, because who else is there? You know what I'm saying? They're talking about go back and watch the tape. It wasn't us, alluding to it was somebody else. They're trying to say it was the linebackers or the safeties. That was the issue for me, man. And first of all, that's trash. At the end of the day, look, we're a team. The coaches are going to see it. The coaches are going to watch the tape. They're going to see what happened. Yeah. We don't have to tell the media. We don't have to tell you guys. We don't have to say this. Oh yeah, it wasn't us. That's weak. And to be honest, like, that is a disappointment. Because at the same time, we're all supposed to be on. Look, we got to be one band no matter we win or we lose, no matter what. We're a team. It's a brotherhood, right? And right now, it's not looking like the cohesiveness is there.
I thought it was interesting, kind of hearing that. And again, it was off camera, and it was just kind of guys talking. And obviously, there's a lot of frustration there. But I'll be interested to watch and see if that continues, and if that continues, and if it gets louder, and if it was just heat of the moment right after the game. I mean, we're in the locker room 15 minutes after the game, so obviously there's a lot of emotion there. But I did think it was really interesting, kind of hearing what everybody was saying. And you learn a lot when the mics are off, right? And that's why I'm not going to name names, like I said, but I did think it was interesting. So something to keep an eye on as we head into to a short week. And obviously, who knows what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor, who left yesterday's game with an injury, but the Colts have a pretty good running game, and they got a pretty good offensive line. And so that entire defense is going to be tested on all three levels come Thursday night. All right, let's jump into our report card. Today's report card brought to you by Colorado Lottery. Play CBS 4 Pick the Score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. Enter at cbscolorado.com/contest. Professor Marshall, let's hand out a grade. What you got?
Well, look, man, I'm going to go ahead and change the tone. I want to, talk about a bright spot on this team. Patrick Surtain. Now, this guy is – I watched it when I was at the game yesterday. I'm watching him go against – as some consider the top route runner in the league.
Yeah.
And it's literally all over him, okay? All right, like a blanket. Like it was clinic tape. It was beautiful to watch. I'm like, yo, this guy is special. Continue this and stay healthy. Who knows? The sky's the limit for this kid. I'm be honest with you, man. He is completely out of this world. Way more than I'm sure all of Broncos country would have thought. The guy is special, man. He gets an A from me for covering and blanketing one of the greatest wide receivers we've seen over the last, decade, I'm sure.
And what's crazy, B. Marsh, is this is year 2. You know what I mean? Like, and we're
Right.
already looking at this guy like, do we want to talk about how he's probably going to get fitted for a gold jacket by the time he's playing? I mean, because that's legit, like, what he is doing. And everybody's like, man, he looks like Champ. He looks like, Darrelle Revis, like the comparisons to all of these great corners who are out there. And they're legit, and he just continues to prove it every single Sunday. And I think that's what's so impressive. So, I love that grade. And I think you go back and you look at that draft class, Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 pick, and then you had Zach Wilson. And I mean, J.C. Horn was a corner who got picked before Pat Surtain. And I think Carolina's probably going to regret that when it's all said and done. No disrespect to J.C. Horn, but like, man, I remember doing a podcast with you right after the draft. It was the very first episode of this. And we were all like, oh, Justin Fields. I mean, Broncos country was so upset that the Broncos didn't draft Justin Fields. And instead they got a guy who's going to be an all-world corner. And maybe
Thank God we didn't draft Justin Fields, okay? Thank God. We were just so desperate for a quarterback, so desperate for offense, so desperate to return to our offensive glory days with the Paytons and the John Elways of the world. We just wanted any quarterback that looked decent or sounded good. Thank God, okay?
Yeah.
Shout out.
Hey. Hindsight's 2020. Turns out George Payton knew what he was doing in that regard. I'm going to hand out a grade to the offensive line. Man, I don't think I've handed out an A or a B all season long. I'm going to give these guys a C. It was not good yesterday. And a C is probably being a little bit too nice, if I'm being honest. But this offensive line needs to be much better moving forward. As you mentioned a couple of times, this game is won and lost in the trenches. And yesterday it was lost in part because of what this offensive line put on tape and put out on the field. So I don't know what's going to happen with Quinn Miners. Billy Turner, I don't know why they didn't put him on IR. They thought he was going to be back sooner than this. I don't know what the deal is there, but you're now 4 games in, and Cam Fleming and Graham Glasgow are not getting it done on the right side of that offensive line. They need to look at doing something there because it has not been good enough. So I'm going to give the offensive line a C yesterday. Probably could have given them a D too, or maybe even an F, but it's Monday. I'll be generous.
I get it. You're impartial to the, to the Broncos, and I am too.
Right?
They definitely were terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say it. It wasn't good at all. No. Honestly, both sides of the ball was bad. Like, that's why we lost the game. Yeah. We lost the game because of the trenches. So offensive line played. Max Crosby. He looked like Lawrence Taylor out there. I don't know what's going on.
Got to be better. Yeah. Can't win with them. The old. All right, stick around. Not Denny Green. Who was that? That was Mike Singletary. It was. If you want to crown him, crown him. I won't say the rest of that because I'm not trying to get in trouble. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, we will zoom around the league, tell you which players we're keeping our eye on for Monday Night Football, an NFC West matchup between the 49ers and the Rams. All that and more coming up next. Of course, we'll get you set for Thursday Night Football as well. Coming up next, right here on Upon Further Review of T. Martin Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Back inside upon further review of B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. It is time now to zoom around the league. Zoom around the league, brought to you by Zoom Care. Visit zoomcare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and in Boulder. B. Marsh, I think the Eagles might be for real. The only 4-0 team in the league right now. They are really impressive. It was funny, I was sitting there and I was getting updates on my phone yesterday, and I was like, wow, the Eagles are in trouble against Jacksonville. What's going on in Jacksonville? Obviously, Philly comes back to win that game. This was a team that I had winning the division in the NFC East. This is a team that I know a lot of smart people had winning the NFC and the whole thing out there in the NFC. And you had them as one of your favorite teams heading into the season, and they have certainly lived up to the hype so far.
Yeah, I definitely had them as one of my sleeper teams. I just think that was loaded, man. What they did for Jalen Hurts by getting A.J. Brown. They got Devonta Smith. They end up signing James Bradbury, a Pro Bowl corner, right? They have Hassan Reddick, man. I think he had around 22 sacks in 2 seasons. They ended up getting guys, right? To, pass rushers, receivers, DBs, to help out that the talent overall, man. And look at him right now. They're 4-0. Jalen Hurts looks like he's taking a step forward. Miles Sanders is playing well. So offensive line is playing good. But the Eagles look strong.
And I love the move there, and I love that you mentioned that because it starts with a quarterback, right? Like, we all know how this league works. It starts with a quarterback, and you feel like, okay, the Eagles felt like they have something in Jalen Hurts. Now let's go get him some pieces to help. Let's go build around him, and then we'll build up our defense too, and then we'll see what happens. And then Jalen has obviously rewarded them by doing his part and getting better as well. But I think that's where it starts. I think that's really smart management, really smart moves by the front office, and I love what they are doing. I also think, how about Kansas City beating Tampa yesterday? I don't know what to make of this, Brandon, because one, I think the Chiefs are proving that they're really good too, right? I think that the Bucs, and I'm trying not to overreact here, but I think the Bucs are in trouble. I think they're going to be okay in the NFC South, but I think when it comes to the greater landscape of the NFC, I'm worried about Tampa. And I know this was a crazy week. They had to go train in Miami because of the hurricane. And so that's why I'm trying not to overreact too hard here. But I am a little bit worried about this Tampa team with all that's going on off the field and Tom Brady and everything like that. And then this was an opportunity for them to kind of come together, and they couldn't get it done. Am I reaching here?
No. Well, first of all, they have offensive line issues as well. They've had offensive line issues since training camp. They've had some injuries, overall. Now, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin did play yesterday, but overall, man, they've had issues, So, first of all, defensively, I don't know what happened, because, Bucs are typically a stout defense. They play fast and physical, and they typically play well. But to get 41 put up on that defense, I don't know what was going on now. Look, Andy Reid is one of the best schemers and play callers in history. Okay, he's one of the greatest, right? Patrick Mahomes is already one of the best quarterbacks in history. Yeah. But we saw what they did to him in the Super Bowl, right? A couple years ago. They came back today or yesterday and was like, no, this is not back then. We're going to do something completely different. And, what's going on with Tampa's defense. But, Bucs, they look a little shaky. You know what I'm saying? They look real shaky. So, I guess we'll see how it goes moving forward.
What do you make of the Cowboys right now? And obviously a big win yesterday against the Commanders. Granted, it was just the Commanders.
Yeah.
Cooper Rush, man.
Look, is there a quarterback controversy in Dallas?
Stop it.
No, there's not. There's not. But all I'm saying is Cooper Rush has never lost as a starter in this league.
That's a good point. Any quarterback can say that.
Shout out to Coop, man. He's never lost, man. And the defense is playing extremely well, and Cooper's doing well, right? He's doing well. I mean, hey, look, he's getting the ball out. He's feeding his playmakers. Zeke and Tony Pollard are doing well, so the offensive line has always been good. So hey, they look all right.
Yeah. Speaking of the Cowboys, you went heavy on the Cowboys last week in our Underdog Fantasy segment, and the palm to the forehead tells you all you need to know about this. Team Spencer improving to 3-0 in our Underdog Fantasy segment. It would have helped, Brandon. You kind of got host because Dalton Schultz, the tight end, didn't play. So it's a bit of an unfair advantage. I had 4 guys active. You had 3 guys active. Zeke, CeeDee
Right.
Lamb, and Richie James. They did well. The 4th guy really kind of put me over the edge there, though.
Yeah, the 4th guy, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. I've done some interviewing, some firing, some rehiring, whatever you want to call it. We're gonna get it done this week. I promise you.
I texted you earlier this week a picture of the scores. And I was like, hey, man, I appreciate your consistency. And you were like, we got to make some changes from the organization, man, from the top down. We got to reevaluate things
We got to
as an
reevaluate.
organization. Yeah.
100%, man.
I love that. All right, let's get into our Monday night matchup here. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. You know how we do it. We draft 4 players each for one particular game, and then we see who ends up having the best night when it is all said and done. So, Brandon, you want to go first this week?
No, you go first again.
You want me to go first this week? All right.
I don't need.
Drafting running backs. I'm going to go Deebo Samuel with my number 1 overall pick and take Deebo Samuel to the 49ers to get things started today.
Okay, that's a good pick, man. And how much time do I got? Because I need to look at the roster real quick. You got Deebo. Hold on. Okay, the plan. Give me a second.
The obvious one's Cooper. You're going to go Cooper.
Yeah.
Right?
Cooper Cup.
Cooper Cup. Sorry, I said Cooper Rush. I got Cowboys on the brain. We're just talking about him.
Okay. Okay. This is what I need to do. Okay. I'm gonna go. You're going Deebo. I'm going. I have 2 picks, correct?
Yeah.
I have to take Coop though, but I'm going Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
Okay. I have to go Jeff Wilson, and I'm deciding if I'm going to go Cam or Coop. I gotta go Coop. Cooper Cup. I gotta go Cooper Cup.
I was really hoping you were going to go Cam because I would have absolutely taken that. All right, so you go Wilson and Cup. I'm going to go Cam Akers. Okay. And then I'm going to throw, do I want Ayuk or Kittle? That's a tough one. I'm going to go Brandon Ayuk.
Okay.
All right, so you've already got Cooper Kupp and you've already got Jeff Wilson. Who are you taking with your next 2 picks?
My next 2, I'm going to go Darrell Henderson, and I'm going to go George Kittle.
Darrell Henderson and George Kittle. I like that. All right, well, Kittle off the board. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to wrap it up with Tyler Higbee as my final pick. So, Team Marshall, you got Cooper Kupp, Jeff Wilson, George Kittle, and Darrell Henderson. I like that. That's actually a really good I like that, B. I think you might be heading for your first win. You're like the Raiders. Starting out slow, coming in after an 0-3 start. I got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Higbee, and Cam Akers on Team Spencer tonight. Hey, quickly before we get out of here, B. Marsh, the challenge is getting your body, getting your mind, getting the game plan right for a Thursday night game. What are the Broncos looking at this week as the Colts come to town?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's a short week. It's not real. The practice on physical is more mental than anything. So if you got some bumps and bruises, you got to get in the training room. You got to take care of your body. And it's a short week, right? So you got to watch as much film as you can, get as much rest as you can, so you'll perform the best that you can on Thursday night. So Thursdays games they're real tricky. They're pretty tricky. So we'll see how they do. It's all about preparation, the mental preparation. These guys are professionals, so the physical aspect will come to them. It's like a muscle memory type of situation, but the mental aspect is number 1. So we'll see how they do.
Did it help having those games at home when you had Thursday night games at home opposed to having to travel on Wednesday?
Oh yeah, 100%. It definitely helped. It helped. I could recover more. I could do more instead of worrying about hopping on the plane. And because if I need to do something Wednesday, instead of hopping on the plane, I could go to see my chiropractor. I can go see whoever, my massage therapist or whatever I could do to get that extra treatment to make sure my body was okay.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully that benefits the Broncos as they get things together. Hopefully get the ship righted on Thursday. Reminder, we'll have an extra podcast for you. Instead of a Monday edition, we're going to have a Friday edition right after the game. Brandon going to be here in studio, and so we will join you on CBS News Colorado for that on Friday afternoon as well. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented as always by Underdog Fantasy. Thanks so much for logging on to CBS News Colorado and wherever you get your podcast. We will talk to you on Friday. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.